Prejudice and groups. So we're going to take a look at a couple of the questions from the Chapter 9 quiz that I feel like we should touch on, based on the responses from the quiz. So we're going to look specifically here at prejudice from Chapter 9, and particularly this idea about groups. Okay, so first let's go ahead and take a look at prejudice and how we would define, what exactly do we mean by prejudice. Okay, so here's a couple of different definitions that I was able to find. Preconceived negative judgment of a group and its individual members, or a hostile or negative attitude toward a distinguishable group of people based solely on their membership in that group. Okay, so as you can see, the idea of groups is a really important part to prejudice and these kind of negative attitudes or feelings that we have toward those people in that group. So just a quick reminder from Chapter 8 that a group is two or more people who, for at least some amount of time, interact and influence one another. Okay, so that's our groups. And so prejudice is pretty much predicated on that group idea. Okay, we really like to group people, which is actually something we're going to talk about right here with groups. Okay, so when it comes to us forming groups and our ideas about how groups work for us, the textbook talks about this social identity theory and kind of these three components. Okay, first we like to categorize people. We kind of feel this need, and that, well, it's also useful to put people into these different groups. Okay, so we like to categorize them. Okay, we also like to identify. So we've got these groups. We are part of some groups, and we like to identify with that group, or associate ourselves with that group and its characteristics and its ideals. Okay, and lastly, then we like to also compare. So we have our group, and we like to compare our group to another group. Okay, kind of evaluate and contrast the differences there. Okay, and that's where we kind of then get these ideas about the in-group and the out-group. Okay, so when we identify with a group, that group becomes our in-group because we are, a part of that group. Versus when we start to compare, so we've got our group and now we compare it with this other group, okay, that is then the out-group. That other group is the out-group. And this question number 7 says, between classes, you notice how smokers congregate outside the doors of the building. When interacting with one another, they seem to behave as if they identify as quite different from the non-smokers who happen to be outside the door. What term would best describe the group of smokers? The correct answer is supposed to be the in-group, but the problem here is that there's no, when it's talking about you and you noticing these things, it doesn't say if you identify with the non-smokers or with the smokers, and that's the problem. So anyway, what we're going to end up doing is actually tossing that question and just giving everybody 2 points for that. Okay, but now if it actually said something like, you as a smoker happen to notice this and this and this, okay, then the smokers would obviously be the in-group, okay, because you would identify with that group. Whereas if you're a non-smoker and you're noticing the smokers doing this and this and this, and the non-smokers that, then the smokers would represent the out-group. Okay. Anyway, so I'm just going to add 2 points to everybody's quiz to just make it simple and easy for grade purposes, I guess. Okay. Anyway, so those are the that's kind of the idea with the in-group and the out-group. Okay, but these groups are further important for us because then that's when we get into these ideas about stereotypes and how we, feel or believe about those people in other groups. Okay, typically those are most often negative attitudes or feelings or beliefs about those other people and groups. But anyway, they're just overgeneralized, they're inaccurate, and a lot of times they're resistant to new information that we get. Okay, and that's this piece. This other question says blank occurs when a new stereotype is formed about groups of individuals who do not fit their stereotype. Okay, and so when it comes to our stereotypes, when we find individuals who don't really fit into that, we view them as a member of that group, but then we notice that they don't behave or don't have the characteristics of the group, we end up doing one of two things. First, we might do what's called subtyping. And this kind of, you can use the whole, there's always the exception to the rule kind of saying. And that's what this one's all about, is basically we leave them a member of that group and we still feel about them in the same way as our stereotype, because we just kind of write it off as, there's always an exception to the rule. Okay, and the other thing we might do is go through what's called subgrouping. Okay, in which case we may then just form a new group to say, all right, well, that's the stereotypical characteristic or behavior. Well, let's just form a new group in there. Okay, so for example, we might have this idea about professors. Maybe professors are very kind of formal people, very intelligent and formal. Okay, so if we happen across a professor who is, I don't know, kind of goofy and funny, okay, then we might, find a couple like that, and again, subtyping would just be, yeah, okay, well, there are always exceptions. They still will, fall into that professor kind of formal, intelligent category or stereotype. Okay, the subgrouping, on the other hand, is if we've got these professors who are very formal and intelligent, but then we happen across a funny, goofy kind of professor. Then instead, we might then form this new group of, maybe funny and goofy professors. Okay, so we've still got this idea of professors, but we now have this new group, hence the subgroup of the overall group of professors. And so we don't just kind of write it off as, oh yeah, that's just a kind of outlier, still part of the group, but not typical. Instead, we form a new group within the professor group and say, hey, these are funny professors. So now you've got a new stereotype for that group of professors. And that's, so, sorry, to go back to the question, blank occurs when a new stereotype is formed about groups of individuals who do not fit their stereotype. So that would be subgrouping, because we now have a new group there of funny professors instead of just kind of this overall professor idea. Okay, so that's the subtyping, subgrouping kind of distinction there. Okay, so anyway, that's prejudice groups, stereotyping. Like I said, on that quiz, I'm just going to go in and give everyone an additional 2 points for their Chapter 9 quiz.